Welcome to the culture right here on the Black Star Network, folks. Welcome. We got a great show for you. First and foremost, let's talk about Deshaun Watson. The NFL has made a decision about what to do with the superstar quarterback in light of his sexual misconduct violations. We'll break it all down, but more importantly, we want to get your reactions to the new sentence of Deshaun and what his suspension is going to look like and what it entails. So get ready to hop on and be a part of that conversation. Also, we're going to be checking in with national correspondent for the Griot, Ashley Banks, to give us some updates about a couple of those unique stories, including what Ben Jealous is doing to get black men out to the polls. We'll have a conversation with her about that effort. Later, let's talk about what Lisa Kudrow has said about Friends and why some people are just upset with the Friends star who said that white people, that the writer of Friends can't talk about or really speak or express the experience of black people. I'm going to share with you the full quote, and then you determine whether you agree with her or not. And then later, let's have more conversation about what's going on. I'm going to share with you about what Snoop Dogg is doing and a whole lot more. Folks, stay with us. It's a lot to get to on today's edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Let's go. Folks, welcome to the culture right here on the Black Star Network. So happy that you can join us on this fantastic Thursday. Happy Thursday, folks. Thank you for tuning in. We got a lot to talk about, but first and foremost, before we start the conversations, I want to invite you to make sure that you show your continued support for the work that we're doing here on the Black Star Network. Make sure you go to our website at blackstarnetwork.com. Support us financially, support us with with sharing the content, support us, and making sure you let people know they can download the app for free. They can all find that information about everything that we're doing right on blackstarnetwork.com. And big shout out to my online culture crew, y'all. I want to hear what you got to say. We got a lot of big conversations lined up for you, so I'm very, very excited to get your feedback. Make sure you show up and you share your thoughts on our on our YouTube channel, as well as our Facebook page. And let's have the conversations that you love to have, folks, talking about the culture. And we are so excited to jump into this conversation because we want to talk about the latest and with the superstar quarterback from the NFL, Mr. Deshaun Watson. You know, we already talked at length about what he has done, but the big conversation now has been what has been decided on as the NFL has made a decision about his suspension. Now, y'all remember that it was at first ruled that Deshaun Watson was going to be suspended for 6 games for his sexual misconduct violations against a number of women who have filed lawsuits against the quarterback. 24 women, in fact, have filed lawsuits, even though there were over 60 women that Deshaun Watson had interacted with over the past 2 years that he was in Houston and doing some really sexually oriented activities with. And out of those 24 women, he had settled with 23. Well, that has led to the NFL deciding to state their case and saying that they would like to see some harsh penalty against the quarterback. Now, he has since moved from Houston, gotten to the Cleveland with a whopping $230 million guaranteed deal, meaning that he will still get paid even if he doesn't play. But at the first ruling and the first decision that was made was that he would be suspended for 6 games and fined for $5 million. Well, that suspension was appealed. And as a result of that, that decision was not determined yet, as a new judge is still reviewing the details of the case. So here's where the NFL stands on it. Take a look at this. Keenan, let's throw this one up first, brother. The NFL said that rather than wait for former New Jersey attorney Peter Harvey's decision on the NFL's appeal of the initial punishment handed down, the league and Cleveland Browns quarterback have agreed that Watson will be suspended 11 games and fined $5 million for violating the league's personal conduct policy amid allegations of sexual misconduct. The NFL announced this earlier today. Watson also agreed to mandatory counseling as part of the deal. Now, the agreement overrides jointly appointed disciplinary officer Sue Robinson's August 1st ruling that Watson should serve a 6-game suspension. However, the settlement falls well short of the year-long ban that the NFL had asked Robinson to level against Watson. And that was from USA Today. Now, let me share with you what Deshaun had to say about this situation. Like I said, he was looking at 6. The NFL was pushing for 17 games because of the extra game that's been added to the season, and they landed at the number 11. Here's what Deshaun had to say about the whole situation. He said, quote, "I'm grateful that the disciplinary process has ended and extremely appreciative of the tremendous support I've received throughout my short time with the Browns organization." He said, "I apologize once again for any pain this situation has caused. I take accountability for the decisions I've made. My focus going forward is on working to become the best version of myself on and off the field and supporting my teammates however possible while I'm away from the team. I'm excited about what the future holds for me in Cleveland." We wanted to get your reaction to this. So folks, post your comments on our YouTube and Facebook page. What do you make of this? Do you agree or disagree with this decision about Deshaun Watson? Also, I want to bring in national correspondent for the Griot. She's been doing fantastic work here for Black Star Network here on The Culture. Ashley Banks is joining us as well. And folks, make sure you post your comments, and we would love to hear what you have to say. Ashley, thank you so much, sis, for checking in on this situation. I've already said a lot about this. I'm going to keep it real with you, Ashley. I've already said a lot about this. Okay. But, okay, 11 games, $5 million fine, mandatory counseling. Is this sufficient?
Many people say no. Obviously, Deshaun wants to move forward with his life. As you read his statement, he's like, you know what? I just want this to be the past. I want to live in the present and keep it pushing. But many people are just saying this is a slap on the wrist. First of all, $5 million. This man he signed a $230 million contract. So $5 million to him is absolutely nothing. And then people have been mentioning and comparing Deshaun Watson's suspension to that of Michael Vick and how he had a harsher punishment for abusing dogs. And people are like, Deshaun Watson has abused at least 24 women that filed lawsuits against him. And this is your response, NFL? People also compared this to Colin Kaepernick and stated that it seems like Colin Kaepernick had a harsher sentence for protesting during the national anthem than Deshaun Watson is facing. So many people are really upset and questioning if the NFL really does care about protecting women, or do they just care about protecting their bottom line? And so we know that Deshaun Watson is a star quarterback. He's at the Browns. The Browns have stated that they essentially need him, right, to win. And so it's like, is it more about winning than it is about protecting women in this instance? It's very unfortunate, but Deshaun did mention, although there were 24 lawsuits filed against him and he settled for 23 of them, that does not mean that he's guilty. And yes, sure. And the court of law, he has not been made guilty or been stated that he is guilty of committing a crime. But that doesn't mean that he didn't commit this, right? And it doesn't mean that these things did not happen. But it's just very unfortunate to see that this is the NFL's response. Some people are even calling this a vacation for Deshaun Watson, saying, just a little more than 2 months, he's going to be on vacation while he's still getting paid. He gets to play in the December 4th game against the Texans. And before that, he gets to practice. So essentially, he's only going to be sitting out for a very short time over these serious allegations that are pending against him.
So you bring up a lot. You bring up some great points, Ashley. And, my face right now is to everything you just said is like, Yeah. Yeah. I mean, okay. So if we look at it, the NFL was actually saying that they were actually pushing for 17 games. They were actually pushing for him to pay more than $5 million. And of course, they were also pushing for the mandatory counseling.
Mm-hmm.
So they were actually looking for him to try to get him to not play at all.
Yeah.
And I think the Browns had something to do with it, obviously, making some decisions behind closed doors and like, hey, please, look, we'll do something. And they probably, and maybe they can't get out of that $230 million deal, right? Because this would warrant, I would think, Ashley, I think it would warrant for them to cut him from the team and say, okay, we're going to pay you say half of that or a quarter of that because we're we initially made an agreement. So they may not have been able to get out that deal. And they petitioned the NFL, lobbied the NFL to say, hey, can we figure something out, right?
Yeah, no.
I just don't like the part of he agreed. Like it just doesn't feel like a penalty for him. It's like, oh, okay, cool. 11 games. He agreed initially to 8 games being suspended. Now he's like, okay, 3 more. Okay. And so you're right. I mean, I think it's just feels a slap on the wrist. If we were to talk about the great hypocrisy of NFL decision making, then I think that the game will be over, right? Like, yeah, Cap has not been signed. And Jawan, you checked in and you made that very point. You were like, you can't talk about Deshaun Watson when Colin Kaepernick hasn't been signed. Colin Kaepernick never violated a sexual misconduct policy. Colin Kaepernick certainly didn't get a whopping, $230 million and then made the whole, not just the team, but the whole league look crazy where everybody is talking about this. Colin Kaepernick did not make the fact that brought, called the league's commitment to women issues and to women in general, call that into question. So all of this, Colin Kaepernick, we know the Colin Kaepernick thing is just wrong. That's just totally wrong. So, I mean, it sucks. It sucks.
Yeah.
And here's the other part about it too, and then we want to get to hear from our culture crew online. The other part about it is it's a black man. You know what I mean? So by it being a black man who it probably in other circumstances, if it was a white male, we know what's happened like with Ben Roethlisberger, then there would be, but now this causes a lot of what's the word I'm looking for, Ashley? You as black men, now we kind of have to take sides. Like, okay, do you want to make a black man not to be quote unquote crucified, or do you want to kind of have a black man being punished for abusing women?
Right.
And that puts us as black people, again, that puts us in this crazy ass space.
It does. It does. Like you're saying, it's like, do you sit back and you say this man has not been found guilty in a court of law? So we should take the allegations at face value. And should we talk about the disparities, like you're saying, in the NFL, what happened with Ben Roethlisberger and a few others that are of a different race? Or do you hold him accountable and say, although he has not been found guilty of committing a crime and just an investigation by the NFL found that, he is guilty of sexually assaulting these women. Do you support this punishment and move forward? Or, what do you do? And like you're saying, that's the first thing that I thought about when the news broke, months ago about this. It's just like, really, we don't need this. This is very unfortunate. But as a member of the Black community, it is really hard when it comes to responding to situations like this, because you can see the disparities. You can see what's happening here.
Yeah,
absolutely. He does need to be held accountable at the end of the day for everything that has taken place.
Absolutely. All right, let's go to the comments. Let's go to our online culture crew, folks. Post your comments as we have this conversation. Damon, my guy, Damon, thank you so much for checking in. Damon, you said, I'm glad the suspension has been decided. I am tired of hearing about it. Yeah, me too, Damon. With that, he is sick in the head. He needs counseling. He needs help. I think we all could agree that he needs help. I'm serious. He needs help. Chris, you checked in. Damon, thank you so much. Chris V, you said the NFL is a joke with these suspensions. They never can get it right the first time around. Yes, Chris. Actually, I don't understand. You would think that it would be like they make it so hard to do the right thing.
It
Chris,
makes no sense.
I
It's
just
almost
don't
like
get it.
a legal team and have things in place. You know what can happen. I mean, you have a legal team, you have advisors. It shouldn't be that difficult.
I mean, every time a big opportunity comes along, that we as the public, we say to ourselves, "Oh man, this is a slam dunk decision." It's like they're fumbling and bumbling through it, and it's like you're like, "What? What?" And then you wonder, like, wait a minute, are you guys just intentionally sabotaging your own decision making, or do you not want Black people there? I mean, I get it. A lot of Black folks decided to stop watching because of Colin Kaepernick, but you still got, we already know 70% of the players are Black in the NFL. So, you still got those other Black men who came from all these different backgrounds who see making it to the NFL is still a big thing, right? They're still, you got brothers in the league that are doing something for the communities that they come from, that are being role models, that are family men. They're not all out partying and just doing wild shit. You know what I'm saying? So you're like, again, you got to be in a space like, I want to support the brothers because they're doing great things. Their talent is God-given. But then at the same time, you're like, golly, the NFL just put you in this, not just this economic space, this economic dilemma, but this moral dilemma. You know what I mean? And I mean, Black folks, how many more dilemmas we have to decide that we're going to be Black or for a system. And it's crazy. It's absolutely insane.
Yeah. So many politics, Farajii.
Too many damn. But all I'll be wanting to do is just watch football.
That's it.
I mean, I love football. I love the game of football.
Mm-hmm.
All I want to do is just watch football. And then it's like this other shit.
I hear you.
Hey, King Lee, Chris B, my man, thank you, brother. King Lee, my guy, you said perhaps he will get the psychological help that he desperately needs. Yeah, I hope so. I really do hope so. It doesn't seem like it because he's so quick. And I think to your point, Ashley, you say he seems like he just wants to move on. But it's like, bro, 24 women? Like, how are you going to move on from that? Like, I get it. And I said it when I don't know if you read, I'm sure you probably did, but when he did that last apology, he was like, "Oh, I'm sorry about the women I've impacted." Mm-hmm. I'm like, that is the wrong choice of words, bro.
Right. And
like,
he said
impacted.
Yeah, and like you said, he also added that he apologized because he felt like people were triggered by what he was being accused of, not because he did anything wrong.
Right.
So it's like, if he really did do something wrong here and he gets this psychological help or goes to therapy, I mean, is it really going to work if he's in denial and doesn't believe that he did anything wrong? So.
No, it's not going to work. Janae, you checked in. Janae, good to hear from you, sis. You say, what does a financial fine say? That if you have money, you can get away with the crime/abuse? Really should be out of the league, definitely for the entire season. There are other players. Exactly. I'm with you on that one, Janae. Jawan, you said it. I just want to know how Deshaun Watson can stay on the payroll, but Colin Kaepernick can't get signed. Because Colin Kaepernick shows some level of racism. Ashley, can you answer that? Can you bring some peace to our brains on that?
I can't, because even the NFL apologized for its handling of Colin Kaepernick. So essentially, there's no reason, there's no answer as to why he hasn't been signed, other than the politics of the game, the people who are in control behind the scenes. They're still upset that this man kneeled during the national anthem, as opposed to really seeing the real issues at hand. As we mentioned before, he hasn't hurt anyone. Colin Kaepernick hasn't threatened the lives of anyone, hasn't physically abused anyone, sexually abused anyone. He literally was standing up for his community.
Right.
What was that?
And as a result, he gets, whiteballed out of the league for years. Rashida, my sister, you always check in. Always glad to hear from you. You said, I don't feel sorry for him. Hopefully this will teach him a lesson. If not, keep finding him until he's broke. Well, if you got $230 million in the bank, Ashley, you're going to be finding him at $5. Okay, let's keep finding him till he's broke. $230 million, $5 million right now. Okay, to one. You're going to have to find him at least 50 something times.
Yeah, close
like
about
40 something times, really. And then it's like, you saw about 46 times and finding like, who has time for that? Like, just get it right the first time. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Rashid, I hear you. Allison, you checked in. You said, I agree with the decision, but I am confused with his lame so-called apology. He's just sick. His money, he could have paid for his pleasures.
Well,
I don't know. I think we brought that up before. I think I definitely brought that up before. Like, and I think that to the point of the sickness behind sexual abuse, sexual violence, that's the thing. Like, a lot of these guys, it's not about the sex, it's about the power. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the important thing for us to keep in mind, that it's not about the actual sex, or it's about having that power. And I think that that we should keep that. We should understand that he just loves to express. And you could tell, like, he still hasn't fully taken full accountability. Yes, he could say in a statement, yes, these are my decisions, but you haven't taken full accountability. Like, you haven't really shown remorse to the point where people believe you. And I think that's the big thing, Ashley. What's your take on that?
No, you're right. We've seen it time and time again with these celebrities who have been found guilty of sexually assaulting people. And it's like, sure, they have the money to pay to have these sexual interactions, but they don't even need the money. It's just their clout, who they are. They can attract the people that they want. Like you said, it's really just about power, being able to control people, knowing that they can get people to do whatever they want at any given time. It's a sickness. As we saw with R. Kelly, for instance, R. Kelly could pay for any pleasures he needed, but essentially, no, he wanted to go for underage girls. He liked having control and power over them.
Yeah.
And it's like, so many grown women were throwing themselves at R. Kelly, wanting to be with him. And he's just like, no, don't want that. I want what I want. And
Ashley, when we have that conversation, because I think that's the other part of the discussion, right? Like, you can, and it just goes to where our culture is, that you can hear a story about a person, about a man who is either actually guilty or alleged to be guilty of sexual misconduct, sexual violence, sexual abuse, and women still throw themselves at them.
Yeah. Women,
like you said, still throw themselves at R. Kelly. They are standing out and protesting for him.
Yeah.
Or, women will still approach a man like a Deshaun Watson, right? Mm-hmm. Like, there's still some underlying trauma there. Mm-hmm. I believe. Now, I could be wrong, but it just looks like it's underlying trauma there around this situation. But, it's mind-blowing, absolutely mind-blowing. Folks, we're going to take a quick pause. When we come forward, we're going to get more of your thoughts on this. And then Ashley is also going to bring us up to date, speaking of black men, about what Ben Jealous, the former NAACP head, is doing to get black men to the polls. Yep. In a midterm election year, as a very pivotal election year, how will black men show up at the polls? We'll have that conversation. And of course, we want to hear from you. So stay with us. That's coming up here on The Culture, right here on the Black Star Network.
When we invest in ourselves, our glow, our vision, our vibe, we all shine. Together, we are black beyond measure.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
An angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol.
We're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
Here's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear. When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, we're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Check some money orders. Go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is roland@rolandsmartin.com.
All right, folks, welcome back to the culture right here on the Black Star Network. As you saw, we need your support. So many great things are happening here at Black Star Network. So we want your full support and we want your attention, because trust and believe, you're not going to get these type of conversations anywhere else. So make sure you continue to show your support for Black Star Network at our website at blackstarnetwork.com. All right, folks, we've been talking about Deshaun Watson, getting your reaction to the NFL's decision to suspend the superstar quarterback for 11 games, also fining him $5 million and making him have mandatory counseling. Just asking the question, what do you make of this? Now, we have been having this conversation with national correspondent for the Griot and Here Culture, Ashley Banks, to share with us her thoughts about this situation. Ashley, I just want to take a couple of more comments from our online culture crew and get some words from you as well. Janelle checked in. Janelle, always good to see you, sis, and hear from you. Apparently, you said this. Apparently, sexual assault is acceptable, although outside behavioral guidelines, but protest and police brutality is beyond the pale. Yeah. I mean, it's crazy, you know, that, and again, this is why this being in this moment, having a conversation about this situation is just so crazy, because now you for those who may not be as in tuned or as conscious, Ashley, they're like, yeah, well, I mean, if the NFL, like, it just sends the wrong message. Sexual assault is cool. that violation of women is acceptable. Like, yeah, you're going to get some consequences, but not to the detriment of your career.
Right.
Not to the detriment of where it's going to break you down. And I mean, this is not the NFL's fault. I think that we just have a problem of rape culture in the mainstream media and mainstream culture. So it's like when there are moments to make a statement about abuse, sexual abuse, violence, sexual violence, rape, it's a slap on the wrist consequences that come along with it. And it doesn't drive home the point that this is wrong, that this is unacceptable.
Right. And that women need to be protected. I wish that there was a rule just across the board of consequences for things like this, so that everyone, no matter what your race is as a football player, if you are found to be guilty of sexually abusing someone, of raping someone, or just, misconduct in general, that you were dealt with in the same manner. But for instance, we saw with Ray Rice here in Baltimore, where he was seen, beating his then fiance at the time, and he apologized. She even came out and said, I was engaging with him. We were fighting each other. And that was to the detriment of his career. And it's like, now we're seeing Deshaun Watson, where once again, just a slap on the wrist, where he gets a couple of months off and then he's back on the field getting paid these millions of dollars. It's just unfortunate to see what's happening here. Some people, it's a detriment to their career. Other people, it's just like, okay, well, it happened and let's move on. And so, it's just not right.
Crazy. And the crazy thing about it, though, out of all of this, the Browns knew. Like, when they signed him, gave him this shitload ton of money, right? You know what I mean? They knew he was going to be a liability, but they didn't care.
No, because all they see is winning. That's all that mattered to them. We're paying to win. We are paying him this lump sum of money, this $230 million, because he's going to help us win. We don't care what you did. We don't care that you sexually assaulted all these women. We don't care. Are you in jail? No. Okay, then you can play. That's a sad message that the Browns are sending. But that's what they're telling us, that they don't care. So.
Yeah. Hey, Karen. So Karen, you I think you hit the nail on the head with your comment as well. You said, look, the suspension and fine are nonsense. The NFL should take a firm stand and terminate his contract. This will make zero tolerance consequences clear to all NFL players. That's the slippery slope. And as we wrap up this part of the discussion, Ashley, I think we're talking about moving forward, looking forward, as Deshaun wants to do. He wants to move forward. Your case is going to set the precedent that you can do this, that you can continue to do all types of crazy madness and to things, especially off the field, especially to women, and that the NFL is going to allow it to some degree, that you will still be able to play. And if you want, and if the NFL wants to really rebuild, or at least show the world that they're serious about punishing players and that they're trying to get the best people on the field as well as off the field, this is the wrong message that they're sending. How do you think it's going to move forward as we look forward when other cases come up? How do you think this case is going to impact, what other cases come up? Because it's going to come up.
Yeah, for sure. I think, like you're saying, it's setting a dangerous precedent. But what I think is going to have to take place is fan reaction. How are fans going to react to this? Is this going to impact the NFL? Is this going to impact the money that the Browns will be making from fans going to games? Is this going to be a detriment to the Browns down the line, just having Deshaun Watson on their team? And I think that's how the NFL will end up reacting to this. And so let's say if fans are just really upset, other players and other teams don't want to play against him, or just really upset that he's even in the NFL at all, this will set the tone for the next person possibly who is accused of sexually abusing someone. But I think as of right now, the NFL, once again, their main focus is revenue. We want to make money. This is a business at the end of the day. They don't care so much about who was harmed. that a detriment was caused to women, and that this could be triggering for women to see Deshaun, in real life while they're going to football games or on their television screens. They couldn't care less. So I think it's going to be determined by the way that people react moving forward with this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Speaking of black men, you talk to another black man who's on the other end of the spectrum, trying to encourage other brothers to do great things in their community, more importantly, to get them to the polls. Let's talk a little bit about with the former NAACP president, Mr. Ben Jealous. He's also a former gubernatorial candidate as well for the Democratic Party in Maryland. But he had he started an organization, and he's focused on getting black men politically engaged. What's that about, Ashley?
That's correct. So Ben Jealous, he's now the president of the People for the American Way. And in 2020, he launched the Defend the Black Vote campaign in order to tackle voter suppression and to just get rid of misinformation. He says those things are the cause of why black men are less likely to vote. He says black men vote less than black women and, their white counterparts. And that just due in part because they're being fed information that discourages them from voting. He told me that through researching and conducting interviews with different organizations, he found that in 2016, Donald Trump and his campaign targeted 3 million black men, fed them misinformation. And for those who were on the fence about who they were going to vote for, whether it was going to be him or Hillary Clinton, through the disinformation campaign, it caused those black men to either not vote at all or vote for him, causing him to win in that election. And so Ben Jealous is aiming to stop that. He wants to make sure that black men are being heard because their voices do matter, right? Everyone's voice matters, but he wants black men just to know that their voices matter. And so what he's been doing for the past couple of years, he's been sending text messages to black men, basically holding meetings and just finding a way to be on their level, to understand what issues are plaguing them in their communities, and to help that translate to them casting a ballot. I know, Farajii, you've spoken to probably plenty of people who will tell you that voting doesn't matter, that the system is rigged. Why am I going to cast a ballot? Nobody cares what I have to say. It's not going to change. Politicians tell you what you want to hear, and then once they get in office, they do something else. And yes, we have seen that. We have definitely seen that. But Ben Jealous has stated that you're not going to lose anything essentially by casting a ballot. Maybe a couple minutes casting your ballot, but he was like, it's better to cast your ballot and to hope for the best than to just sit back and watch everything fall apart. And so what he's doing is just trying his best to explain to people that if you don't like your settings, if you don't like what your politicians are doing, then you get out there and you try to fill those roles. Because if you have a passion for helping your community, if you have a passion for making your community better, don't just sit back, stand up and do something about it, because there are others who feel the same way that you do, and they need someone who's going to take charge. And so what he's doing is, I think, a really good thing for black men, for the black community. And he's very passionate about stances.
I know. I have had the opportunity, and I'm glad that you brought our attention to this, because I've had the opportunity to talk to Mr. Jealous on a couple of occasions. I remember when Freddie Gray happened. Matter of fact, funny story, when Freddie Gray happened, Brother Rowland came to Morgan State University, and he held a big town hall meeting, and I was on the panel at that time, and Ben Jealous was sitting right next to me. And so we started talking about police brutality issues and reform a little bit during the course of that, and then a little bit after that. So, I definitely know he's passionate. And this is fascinating to me, Ashley, just because, what was one of the big reasons why black men, for example, why we aren't voting, or why those 3 million black men decided to vote for Donald Trump, who has a history of bias and prejudice against black men.
Right.
I just don't understand. I don't think. Now, here's what you mentioned that I talked to people who talked about voting not being important. And I've heard that. I've also heard from black men that they can get past some of Donald Trump's biases because, quote unquote, they always say this BS, he's good on economics. I don't know how that happens considering he got a bankruptcy record longer than anything. But they say he's good on economics. And I think that Donald Trump, as crazy as it sounds, appeals to the manly man. He's like a come in the room, take charge, a personality type of guy, right? That's just like, regardless of what you think, regardless of how you feel about me, I'm going to make a decision that's good for me. And I'm a manly man. And I've actually heard black men say that, like this type of view of the former president. And I'm like, that seems to be very weird to me.
You and me both, Farajii. And I think what is coming across, I mean, as we know, Trump is rude. It's not being a man, he's rude. But also, I think what appeals to people, not just, I would say, black men, is that with Trump, he just speaks everyday language. We had, Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden and others who speak politician language. I think because former President Donald Trump, he just speaks your everyday language. He can relate and appeal to people. And so maybe that's what it is. But at the same time, if you really paid attention to his history, paid attention to his lifestyle, you would know that Trump may know something about the economy. He doesn't know much, but he may know a little something about the economy, but he's not looking out for the pockets of black people. That's the least of his concern. He's not looking out for your pockets. He's looking out for the pockets of the rich. And we're not talking about the black rich. We're talking about the white rich and just himself in general. And so it has been interesting in recent years. I've come across black people, not just black men, but black women who did come out and support Trump. And I think it's because they were also being fed misinformation. They were seeing things online, on Instagram. There's so much, fake news out there.
Right.
And taking it at face value. And that's not what it is. Trump has never been for black people and probably will never be for black people. And
I don't think he will be, but I think that might be one of the Democrats' issues. And I know you got to hop off, but I think that might be one of the Democrats' issues, is that you want to put men before other men that men can respect, right? Especially black men. I mean, we love and we respect Barack Obama, but to some black men, he's not strong enough. He's not the quote unquote the manly man type, right?
And he probably couldn't be. I mean, being a black.
I don't know, and I'm just talking about just the persona, because I think that if you're a manly man, if you respect your wife, take care of your family, you know what I mean? You serve your community. These are the things that make up manhood. So I think that to this point of what the work Ben Jealous is doing is important, because manhood it includes you thinking beyond just yourself.
Right.
It includes you thinking about the state of your community. It includes you thinking about the state of the country. I mean, there's just so much. And I think that if we really think about it, these values that we have and this view that we have probably, conflates with how we're voting. And I think it's interesting. It's very, very interesting. Sandy, you checked in. Good to hear from you. Sandy, you said, quote, complaining is rampant in the community. Yes, lots of talking, and no one wants to be fearless to run or help change the politics in their area. Yeah. And then Mike, you checked in and said they vote less because they lack representation where it matters within the party itself. The Democratic Party affirms the black political set through black women, disregarding black men's interests. So that's a big part of it. Ashley, I know you got to go. I always appreciate you, and I thank you so much for your insights and your reporting. We'll certainly bring you back on, but how can people read your article about Ben Jealous?
For sure. So be sure to follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Ashley M. Banks. You can also check out my articles at thegrio.com.
Absolutely. There it is. Ashley Bank, national correspondent for The Griot, hardworking journalist. and she is an aspiring. She's working through it, folks, to get her degree in law. So we're looking forward to some great things from Ashley Banks. Thank you, Ashley, for being on the culture. We truly appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Farajii.
Folks, you're welcome. Folks, I just want to take a quick moment to acknowledge that, and maybe we should have more discussions about this, and, over the next few days or the next couple of weeks, especially as midterms come up, folks, that Black men may, brothers, for y'all watching, I would be interested to see and hear from you what is driving you to the polls. Outside of history, we understand that part of it. But I think that might be that this might be one of the missing parts of the conversation about Black civic engagement is how do you have a candidate that's going to speak to the strength, the aspiring strength, the ongoing strength, the strength of Black men. A candidate that is going to speak to that. Yes, you can have the family and all of that, but I think men want to see other men in positions of power. And I'm not trying to be misogynist here, folks. Don't trust and believe. That's not the spirit I'm saying this in. But I think that that's part of why there's this appeal that I've seen from Black men to Donald Trump. That he's a quote unquote take charge type of guy that don't listen to anybody else. He does what he wants to do. Maybe I'm wrong on that. Let me get some feedback from you on that if you think I'm wrong on that. Because if that's the case, then the Democrats are going to have to find a candidate that speaks to this sentiment of a man that is willing to step up and show that level of leadership. He doesn't have to be disrespectful, of course not. But, when you look at the type of white men that follow Donald Trump, for example, I'm just using this example. When we saw footage of Brother Roland's new book, White Fear, right, and you see those type of men, these are guys that are like, I'm not trying, but they come across as being your prototypical guy that's going to go out and he's going to do what he wants to do, and he's going to, very traditional, old school. I could be wrong in my analysis, but I'm thinking why we don't come to the polls that much. Robin, you checked in. You said, Farajii, you're a manly man. I thank you. I appreciate that, Robin. The way you go hard on defending women is what we need to see more. Well, I appreciate that. But here's the thing. I'm surrounded by women, starting with my wife. I have a daughter. I'm surrounded by women. I was taught a certain way. I have aunts. I have women around me who share with me when I'm thinking crazy or when I'm on the right track. So, you have to, I think as a man, that you should have a healthy circle of women who can check you and respect you, but also will guide you. You know what I mean? I think that's important, especially if you're a man in front of other men and women. So you got to have a healthy way. So Rob and I appreciate that, but that's my politics is based upon who I was blessed to be surrounded with. So that's important. Let's see. Sophia, you checked in and said, again, education. What the F is manly man? This needs to be defined so we are all clear of each other's expectations. Well, I'm using that term, Sophia, just very simply, meaning that, you have this A-type man, right? A man who, and I'm talking about traditionally, we are in a space. And if you think about it, we are in a space where the culture is now redefining what it is to be a man, right? A man. What is manhood? And we don't have enough time to talk about it today, but I'm using that term to just bring home the fact that you have a certain type of man that is able to make a definitive decision, a man who is able to guide, a man that is able to protect, whether it's his family, whether it's his community, whether a man that has self-control. These are the elements of manhood, right? So that means that it doesn't matter what your physical stature may be. I always tell my son, you got to learn how to think, because your physical stature is certainly one is important, staying healthy, being physical, but it's this. Because when things really when you get into a trial, that's what's going to be able to carry you through. So we're talking about that elements of that. Janae, you check, and I appreciate that, Sophia, for checking. I mean, we'll have more conversations, but I'm just using it as a term that, as a way to get us to think about the traditional way that we often see men. Janae, you said the fact that we still have to beg people to vote is how Herschelized people are. It's about numbers, majority that moves the needle, but we fail to be counted in that number and then complain later. Yeah. But again, here's the thing though on that, Janae. Here's the thing about it. The fact is, Black men, we know that. When Black men don't vote, when we decide that we're not going to vote, that is a vote for something else. It's not that because we're not smart enough, we're not competent enough, we're not qualified enough, we're not knowledgeable enough and all of that. When we don't vote, it's because we've made the choice that no one that is presented to us meets our qualifications and meets our standard of who we want to of how we want to be represented. That's a vote. Not voting is just as much as a vote as voting. So that's why I asked the question. Well, I wonder why. Do the Democrats have a Black man problem? And if Trump says, I can get 3 million people to his way of thinking, 3 million Black men are voting for Trump, folks, have voted for Trump. 3 million. Now, you may not know. You may think that all the Black men in your circle who you come across are all on the same page. Well, y'all Black men, y'all all part of the struggle. Y'all understand, blah, blah, blah. Black men, we vote for different reasons, right? So that's interesting. This is fascinating. So we don't have time to get into that part of the discussion, but I think it's worthy of us to do a deep dive into as to see why Black men aren't voting in the same numbers as Black women, why Black men aren't making the type of gains, not making the type of political gains as we see. Black men are being voted into office, but how many of those Black men that are being voted into office is being voted into us was voted on by other Black men? I think that's something that we need to look into. All right, folks, look, we're going to take a quick pause. When we come forward, let's look at another issue that I think is very important. I'm going to check here, talking about the situation with Lisa Kudrow. If you aren't familiar with who Lisa Kudrow is, she's the actor, one of the actresses from the hit show Friends that came out. Y'all remember Friends from back in the 90s? Well, she got into a little bit of a kerfuffle about something she said about Black people being represented on the show. However, I want to share with you the full statement of what she said, and then I'm just simply asking whether you agree or don't agree with Lisa Kudrow. Also, later on at the 4:30 mark Eastern Standard Time, well, let's talk a little bit about the Black Chamber of Commerce. We're going to check in with them to discuss what the latest gains are with small Black businesses and large Black businesses. We'll have that conversation. And I got for you some trends, posts, and doing the most. So we got a lot to get to in the second hour of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. We'll be back.
When we invest in ourselves, our glow, our vision, our vibe, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
When you talk about blackness and what happens in black culture, you're about covering these things that matter to us, speaking to our issues and concerns.
This is a genuine people-powered movement.
There's a lot of stuff that we're not getting. You get it, and you spread the word.
We wish to plead our own cause. Too long have others spoken for us. We cannot tell our own story if we can't pay for it. This is about covering us. Invest in Black-owned media. Your dollars matter. We don't have to keep asking them to cover our stuff. So please support us in what we do, folks. We want to hit 2,000 people, $50 this month, raise $100,000. We're behind 100,000, so we want to hit that. Y'all money makes this possible. Checks and money orders go to P.O. Box 57196, Washington, D.C. 20037-0196. The Cash App is $RM Unfiltered. PayPal is R Martin Unfiltered. Venmo is RM Unfiltered. Zelle is Roland at RolandSMartin.com.
Hatred on the streets, a horrific scene, a white nationalist rally that descended into deadly violence.
White people are losing their damn minds.
As an angry pro-Trump mob storms the U.S. Capitol,
we're about to see the rise of what I call white minority resistance. We have seen white folks in this country who simply cannot tolerate black folks voting.
I think what we're seeing is the inevitable result of violent denial.
This is part of American history. Every time that people of color have made progress, whether real or symbolic, there has been what Carol Anderson at Emory University calls white rage as a backlash.
This is the rise of the Proud Boys and the Boogaloo Boys. America, there's going to be more of this.
There's all the Proud Boys, guys.
This country is getting increasingly racist in its behaviors and its attitudes because of the fear of white people.
The fear that they're taking our jobs, they're taking our resources, they're taking our women. This is white fear.
All right, folks, welcome to the second hour of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. I'm so happy that you are able to join us. Big shout out to my online culture crew, always keeping it entertaining online. So we have these discussions. So many of you are checking in, so many new watchers as well. So big shout out to all my new watchers out there who are just getting involved. Man, I'm so happy to have you to share your thoughts on all of these different topics. And I see Karen, I've seen so many of you. Thank you for tuning in. As you can see, we are doing big things here at Black Star Network. As you saw, if you just tuned in, you saw the new commercial for Brother Roland Martin's new book, White Fear, folks. You can pre-order the book right now. Make sure you check this out. This is going to be a book that is a must read. So if you haven't checked it out, or if you're willing to, to support Brother Roland on it, make sure y'all pre-order a copy of White Fear. And as you saw as well, we are on a push to get more support, financial support, 24-hour streaming. That's the direction that we're taking Black Star Network. And more importantly, this is the direction of having more shows, whether it's a show like The Culture, you got new shows coming, we got other ideas that we want to bring to the table. But we want to make this a very, very provocative, thought-provoking 24-hour streaming platform or dealing with only Black news and information, having conversations that are important for you. So make sure that you show your support for the great work that we're doing here at Black Star Network. You can go to our website at blackstarnetwork.com. All right, I wanted to have a conversation, get your reaction to this, because apparently on like Twitter and other social media spaces, this is a thing, talking about Friends. Y'all remember Friends, the 1990s show? It was a hit show. There were two big shows that I remember back in the 90s that aired on NBC that really got people going. And people are literally still talking about it today. Y'all know the shows. If you don't know them, Friends and Seinfeld. Friends and Seinfeld. I can't, oh my gosh. Now, I've watched Friends. Okay, it was cool. Seinfeld, I think you can find Seinfeld in syndication. Jerry Seinfeld is still one of the most profitable, check this out, folks. I had to read up on it. Jerry Seinfeld, who's been doing, he does like a number of different projects, including his like interviewing cars and all of that. But he actually had a residency in Las Vegas. But he is still considered to be one of the top paid comedians in the country and around the world. Jerry Seinfeld. And it all kicked off. Of course, he did his stand-up comedy, but that branch, once he did Seinfeld the show, it just went into a different space. He hit the stratosphere. Now, with the Friends situation, most of the cast members have gone on to do other projects and become very, very successful. Well, it was recently brought up, and check this out, it was recently brought up, Marta Kaufman, who is one of the writers, the main writers, a woman who is a main writer for Friends and one of the creators of Friends. She came out to say that, when she was looking back on Friends and seeing how the country has evolved politically and socially, that she is not happy. She said for over 20 years, she has been thinking that she created this kind of this foundational show, but she has not been happy with the lack of representation, the lack of diversity on her show, Friends. She wasn't happy. And so she had decided to put some money behind her feelings, right? She went as far as to say, and I'm gonna share this with you. She went as far as to say, you know what? I'm not happy with how Black people and the stories of minorities were not represented in this hit platform, in this hit show. So she said she was going to give $4 million. She kind of had this like moment of clarity, folks. She said, I'm going to give millions of dollars, and she's going to start to support. She pledged to donate $4 million to students studying Africa and Africa diaspora at her alma mater. And she attended Boston's Brandeis University, and she essentially apologized for not doing enough. In the past, she stated that the series, The Friends, that aired from 1994 to 2004, so you're talking about a 10-year run, was a product of the time period, and adding that it reflected the experience of hers and fellow creator David Crane. But she wants to do more. She wants to support Black women, Black writers. And of course, like I mentioned, she wants to support students studying Africa and the Africa diaspora at her alma mater. Now, this has brought people to actually look at the situation of Friends, the show that hasn't been on for 20 plus years. Now people are saying, well, why wasn't there as much diversity in Friends other than a few, cameos by Aisha Tyler and others who came on, but they weren't leads. There weren't many Black leads or any Black leads in the show. Well, Lisa Kudrow, she's making headlines for her statements about the lack of diversity on Friends. In 2020, Lisa Kudrow, who played Phoebe on Friends, said the show would, quote, would not be, take a look at this, folks. I want to share this with y'all. And Keenan, let's post this quote on here. She said in 2020, let's go to the other one. She said in 2020, Kudrow said she would not be that the show would not be an all-white cast if it returned today. She also said doubled down on her statement in a new interview where she attempted to explain why the show lacked diversity in its cast and character experience. And here's why I want y'all to give me your take on this. She said, quote, "Well, I feel like it was a show created by two people who went to Brandeis and wrote about their lives after college. And for shows, especially when it's going to be a comedy that's character driven, you write what you know." She said she believes the white writers, quote, "have no business writing stories about the experiences of being a person of color." She said, "I think at that time, the big problem that I was seeing was, where's the apprenticeship?" Now, this is Lisa Kudrow. She talked about this. Do you agree with her? Do you agree with her? Was she right or was she wrong, folks? Was she right or was she wrong? Now, Black people and people all across people on social media are just going in on Lisa Kudrow about this statement. Y'all want to hear something though? Can you tell me if I'm and let's have a quick conversation about it. I think she's right. I think she is absolutely right. I think she's right. Here's why, folks. For too long, we have wanted to be represented. Here's why. In the writer's room in Hollywood, and we're still seeing this today, Black voices aren't present. I would be offended if a white writer wrote for a Black character, because of exactly what Lisa Kudrow said, for that very reason, where she said, you can't have a person writing for an experience that they never had. And I think it's interesting that people are upset with Lisa about this, because it's like, do we really want to have white writers writing for Black characters? Let's keep it real, folks. Is that the push that we want to make, and having white writers write for Black characters? How many of us are already upset that anytime they have a movie about Egypt, Africa, mostly Egypt, because Hollywood acts like Egypt is not a part of the continent of Africa, right? So you cast white men to play these African Egyptian characters. We've seen it. We've seen it. You cast white women to play these Egyptian characters because we often believe that Egyptians are light-skinned or they're more pale in their face. And it creates this thing like, oh no, she's Egyptian. I remember, here's an old school case of this. Elizabeth Taylor, one of the great Hollywood ingenues, right? One of the great Hollywood actresses. What was one of the big characters that she played when she was a younger actress, right? Didn't she play like the Egyptian queen? She played one of the Egyptian queens, Elizabeth Taylor. So we have this thing that I think that culturally we have to be very, very mindful of, that when it comes to telling our story, do we really want somebody outside of the community, someone outside of the culture to tell our story? No, I don't. I agree with Lisa. You have friends, and to Marta Coleman's point, she said it was a product of that time. She was not in a mental space to consider diversity and representation. That was not the conversation back in the 90s, man. Back in the 1993, think about where the country was in 1993. Now, of course, you had cases like you had Rodney King. We had, I think the OJ case came a little bit in like 95, if I'm not mistaken. But there were cases like that. But Black people weren't truly represented. Now, on the flip side, let's look at the lack of quote unquote white representation in our shows. Some of the most famous and beloved shows that we loved of the 90s. Y'all go down memory lane with me on this one. Martin. Where were the white characters of Martin? Living Single. Right? Y'all remember that. Girlfriends. That was a little bit later in the early, I think it was the late 90s. If you go about Moesha hanging with Mr. Cooper, right? Like when you think about some of these shows, right, as a result of Friends being the powerhouse show that they had, then you had these other shows where that spoke to us, that spoke to our culture, to our community. It had Black characters. But guess what? How much you want to bet? How much you want to bet that you had a lot of white writers in the writer's room, writing the scripts for these characters? Folks, join me. Join me. So many people are checking in about this. Do you think that what Lisa Kudrow had to say was wrong or what? Let's see. All right, Janelle, you kicking it off. Let's get to your thoughts. You said Kudrow tried to excuse it as the writers just didn't have any Black friends experience. They could have rectified it by diversifying the writing teams like shows like Saturday Night Live did. It was unheard of. Yeah. But you got to also think, going back to Lisa's point, Marta Kaufman didn't have that perspective then. I mean, again, we had big pivotal moments of Black and white issues, but it's just the country wasn't in the different space. Think about it. What is this? 2022. So you're talking about 30 years ago, folks. 25, 30 years ago. We were in a whole different space. We weren't talking. I mean, even though all of this stuff, unfortunately, that we have dealt with now continues to happen today, but culturally, we were in a totally different space. We weren't talking about police reform like we're talking about. We damn sure wasn't talking about reparations. Hell, the LGBTQIA community, the efforts around, trying to have a conversation about the equality of that community wasn't even talked about. I mean, there were we weren't as progressive 30 years ago, 25 years ago. We just weren't that progressive. Chris, you checked in and said Friends just stole the show idea from Living Single. Maybe. And I've heard that. I've heard that. But this is Hollywood. They steal ideas. Yo, this is Hollywood. Hollywood will take a story and run with it and deal with the legal issues later. That's just the nature of the game. Robin, you check back in. Good to hear from you. You said Lisa is right and point. Roland always points out why it's important for us to tell our own story. Remember, we were focused to learn about white culture. Whites never had to learn about Black culture. Bing bong. That wasn't the conversation, even though, again, you had major moments. Of course, the Million Man March took place in 1995, right? That shifted the conversation about Black men. That shifted the conversation about our culture, because in the 90s, y'all remember, there was a lot of efforts, especially in the hip hop world and in the Black culture space. There were a lot of negative images. We saw we saw movies like Boys in the Hood, Menace to Society. These were some of the most powerful, these stories about Black folks. Boys in the Hood came from John Singleton. So Menace to Society came from the Hughes brothers. But these were the movies that helped to shape the world's view of Black men and Black life in America, in LA, and in other places in America. Those films went on an international screen. So by the time like the Million Man March came around, it was an effort. Now, I don't think these Black men created those movies to show how terrible we are as men. but I think they wanted to simply tell a story. But Hollywood exploited that. Hollywood exploited us telling our story from our own place, from a very authentic space, and then showing the world, hey, this is what Black meant. Music, on the music scene. You know, we could talk about the rise of West Coast rap. NWA was still around with Eazy-E. We could talk about the hip hop world at that time. Black men was often seen to be public enemy number one. That was the context in which we saw things. So yes, we saw that, but in Hollywood, there was also like, let's keep the same things going. Brother King Lee, excuse me, you said, okay, so where was Lisa's voice in the 90s about this travesty? Hey, bro, I don't know. Maybe she just got enlightened last year or 2 years ago. Marta Kaufman, who was the founder, Marta, she said it wasn't until George Floyd happened that she started to think about what she did and create friends and not having Black people as lead. And that was 2020. Everybody evolves at a different time. Can we blame people for ignorance, especially white people? Can you blame white people for their ignorance? Yeah, it depends. Yeah, you can to some degree, because, we've been in this struggle for a long, long time. But some white people just never paid attention. Let's keep it real. It's not like us where we wake up with Blackness. We got to think about this shit every day. You know what I'm saying? You can live in the furthest part of town. You can live in the suburbs. You can drive the nicest car. You can have the best profession. But guess what? Each and every day, you and I are confronted with our Blackness. Each and every day, whether we make money or we don't have money, our Blackness is still there. White people, you got to understand. And it took me a long time to get to this space. White people don't think about that. White people don't think about their whiteness. I never forget, I read Robin DiAngelo's book, White, what's the book? Not White Fear. Got me thinking about that. I'll bring it up. But Robin DiAngelo, she wrote this book. She's a whiteness scholar. And she made that point in her book saying, white people don't wake up thinking about community. They thinking about the whiteness the way that we think about it. They don't think about their place in society. They just go along with their day. They don't think about the system. They go along with their day. And so that's a very real place. So we can't impose that. We can expect, oh my goodness. Why don't they think like we think? Because they haven't been oppressed. When you've been oppressed, you think about oppression. When you're the masters, you're not thinking about oppression. You're thinking about your own life. Tell me if I'm wrong. Y'all tell me if I'm wrong, man. Tell me if I'm wrong. Janelle. Oh, let me go to, we got Janelle. Let's go to McCole. McCole, you checked in. Good to hear from you, McCole. You said, what did Lisa Kudrow say that was wrong? No lies detected. They should not be writing about a culture they don't know about. Facts. You know what? I'm cool with that. I can't write about if I was a writer, I can't write about the experiences of a Latino brother. I can't do it. It's a slap in the face to try to write about somebody else's culture, but not and have them in the room at the table. That's a slap in the face. Big slap in the face. So yeah, I'm with you right there, McCall. Janine, you checked in. Good to hear from you. You said this would be like having a bunch of white folks writing for the Cosby Show. We as Black people need to pick our battles better. Yeah. Great point. Can you imagine it was a lot of black, if you had so many white people writing for the Cosby Show? That's another great point. Let's look at the Cosby Show, right? One of the big reasons why the Cosby Show was such a huge show, not just because, and we talked about this, not just because Cliff and Claire were doctors and lawyers respectively, but because they talked about Black culture in a way that you could be proud of it. That's what makes the story of Bill Cosby so sad, because he really did shine a light on Black culture, Black art, Black history. I mean, Black people learned a lot from the Cosby Show. We've gained from that. And that was on a major platform of NBC. So it was huge. That's why a Cosby Show was just such a groundbreaking phenomenon. It was huge. It just broke barriers. And it was lucrative. It wasn't just like a small show. It was like white people watched the Cosby Show. You know what I'm saying? America watched, and now, you know, we when we talk about Bill Cosby, we say America's dad. I mean, it was just that such a big production. And money was spent on it, and the messaging was, be proud of your Blackness. That Black people can be middle class and upper middle class, and we can have our history, and our families are tight knit. You saw the grandfather and the grandmother, and you saw the various generations. I mean, that's powerful, man. That representation was powerful. Nisa checked in 1971. All right, real quick, Nisa. You said, why wouldn't Friends still be all white today? Hollywood writers are still obsessed with skin color and live in, I guess, YouTube bubbles. And the Black people in TV are white adjacent, read as biracial or fair skin. Yeah, that could happen, but I don't think it would. I don't think it would. I think there would be a number of people on Friends. I think you would have a friend that's probably a part of the LGBT community. I think it would be a mixed mind. There's a show right now that everybody is talking about called A League of Their Own with Shantae Adams and some other dynamic women. You know what I mean? The baseball show, it comes off of the movies based on a movie that Tom Hanks was a part of. Tom Hanks and what's the other sister, the other woman? Man, I forgot their name. But y'all remember the baseball film. And this show is a different take on that initial story. But you have Black women, they talk about LGBTQ. It's just more diverse. More diverse. So yes, Nisa, it could happen that way, but people would automatically, if Friends were to come out with a reboot today, you would definitely have a Black friend. Well, probably a couple of them. Definitely have a Latino. You definitely have somebody from the LGBTQ community. Like, it wouldn't be a totally different thing. Lisa Fayas, you said Egypt was a superior civilization to Rome that day. They had a superior library and were expert mathematicians, right? And they were Black. Yep, they were Black, Lisa. You know it, and I know it. But that part of the story, that part of the history is not being represented on the big screen. Thank you so much, Lisa, for checking in. William, you said Disney still has lots of token characters, always funny when 4-year-olds notice. Yep. And Disney is working hard. I've been reading up on Disney. They've been working hard to try to turn the tide on that history. Because Walt Disney, the owner, the founder, the guy who started it all, he was a racist. He was. Mm-hmm. I just saw it. I just read up on that recently. He was a racist. He was a misogynist too. He had a view of how the world should be. And so he created this whole space for that. But again, here's the thing about all of this, folks. Even though something can start off a certain way, it doesn't mean that it has to continue to be that way. That's why it's important for us to never stop fighting for what we believe is the right thing to do. That's why it's important for that. Just because it could be an all-white situation doesn't mean that we shouldn't raise our voice to say, well, what about this person? What about that person? It doesn't have to be, in 2022, we don't have to accept things. We have the power to change things. And I want us to keep that in mind, folks, that yes, the representation is important. It's important for us to make sure that people understand who they are. But the most important part about all of this is understanding that all of us, whether we are consumers of media, whether we are readers, whatever, when you take in information, when you don't see yourself, that you got the power to change that. In Hollywood, as slow as Hollywood is trying in some cases to turn the tides, and we have been talking about this. This is one of the big conversations that we've had on here on the culture, that Hollywood is trying to create spaces, but it may not be trying fast enough. It may not be trying hard enough. But that's why for those of us who are watching films, TV, taking in all of this media, that we say, you know what? No, it's not acceptable. It's not acceptable. And call people on their BS. Call companies on their BS. Because guess what? We are in a whole different space. This is not the 90s. This is 2022. You got all these people living in this country. You got all of this brilliance. People can write their own stories. People can speak from their own personal experiences. And just because a Black person or Latino person or LGBTQ person wants to talk about their experience doesn't mean that the experience of white people should, oh my God, they're trying to take over. No. It's just that we haven't been heard. We haven't been seen. And guess what? Guess what? That's the time we're living in. So I appreciate all of you for being a part of this conversation. We got to take a quick pause. When we come back, folks, I want to share with you some of the great work that's being done by the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation, where we're going to be talking to the executive director, Mr. Lawrence Bowdish, about the open grant program for Black businesses and Black organizations. Let's talk a little bit about that, where we are with that. So let's continue the conversation right here on The Culture on the Black Star Network. We'll be right back.
I'm Deborah Owens, America's Wealth Coach, and my new show, Get Wealthy, focuses on the things that your financial advisor and bank isn't telling you, but you absolutely need to know. So watch Get Wealthy on the Black Star Network.
When we invest in ourselves, we all shine. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
Hi, I'm Dr. Jackie Hood Martin, and I have a question for you. Ever feel as if your life is teetering and the weight and pressure of the world is consistently on your shoulders? Well, let me tell you, living a balanced life isn't easy. Join me each Tuesday on Black Star Network for A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie. We'll laugh together, cry together, pull ourselves together, and cheer each other on. So join me for new shows each Tuesday on Black Star Network, A Balanced Life with Dr. Jackie.
When we invest in ourselves, we're investing in what's next for all of us. Growing, creating, making moves that move us all forward. Together, we are Black beyond measure.
Pull up a chair, take your seat. The Black Tape with me, Dr. Greg Carr, here on the Black Star Network. Every week, we'll take a deeper dive into the world we're living in. Join the conversation only on the Black Star Network.
All right, folks, it's time for us to have for our final conversation. It's time for us to talk about business. And we're very, very excited to have our next guest on to talk about what the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation is doing to support and back Black businesses here in the United States. Now, on Monday, folks, there's the Coalition to Back Black Businesses will launch its 2022 to 2023 grant program. This year, the program will provide $5,000 grants to 272 Black-owned businesses to help meet critical business needs. Now, joining us to talk to us about this very, very important and magnificent effort is Mr. Lawrence Bowdish, who serves as the executive director of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation. And he is here with us this afternoon to talk to us about all of that this grant program has to offer for emerging Black businesses. Mr. Bowdish, thank you so much for being with us. How are you this afternoon?
Pleasure's mine. I'm great. Thank you.
Absolutely, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit about this, sir. About first the work of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation. Is this connected to the Chamber of Commerce?
It is. It is. So the U.S. Chamber is the 501c6 advocacy group. We are a C3, the nonprofit charitable. So our group doesn't do anything with the policy side of it. So that's why this program, the Coalition to Back Black Businesses, is grants, coaching, network building. So directly to small Black-owned businesses across the country. So give us some update on where we are with Black businesses here and around the country. I know this grant program is going to be supporting 272 Black-owned businesses. But what from your vantage point, Lawrence, what's the state of Black businesses in America? Are we at a good place? Are we in a bad place? What's the state? That's a really great question, and one of the things that we've seen, we're entering our third year giving out grants here starting on Monday, as you suggested, at webackblackbusinesses.com. One of the things we've seen, the reason we started this, frankly, is there was that report that came out by Robert Fairley that was for Q1 of 2020. It said 41% of Black-owned businesses closed between March and April of 2020. Since then, there's been some recovery. We've seen some growth, but that's come from a lot of entrepreneurs and new business owners that would not have started a business under non-COVID circumstances, right? And so there's been massive growth, but massive new growth of folks that might not have, a little bit of the ins and outs of entrepreneurial thought that they might need to get going. And so while we've seen a rebound, that rebound it's obviously promising, but it's not as secure as I think some might like it to be. And so the reason why we're keeping this program going now in its third year is to make sure that, particularly for, we don't have any limit on how old the business can be. You can be 50 years old or 6 months old, right? We want to make sure particularly that some of these newer businesses with folks that have started business really recently have an opportunity to, get a step up in their entrepreneurial prep to hopefully to make this sort of rebound persist through, who knows what the next year of the economy will look like. So.
Right. And I think many people are trying to figure out if, for example, if the United States government is serious about making sure that Black-owned businesses can be sustained. Do you feel like, that is a part of the priority list for the Biden-Harris administration?
So I can't speak about that officially. However, I do think the codification of the MBDA is a great start to that. So I think that is an important step in the right direction. We partner with the U.S. Black Chamber, the National Black Chamber, National Business League, and Walker's Legacy. They were all very important partners in making sure that that Mr. Clevens was appointed to that role. And I think that's going to be a good start to take a lot of the talk and help turn it into sort of real action. And hopefully our grants can be an important aspect of that.
Absolutely. One of the big things about having this conversation with you today is that I wanted people to know before the grant program opens on Monday, how serious and important this is, because, you have a limited number of resources, a limited number of grants for 272 businesses. What do you, for those 272, talk to us about the qualifications. What kind of Black-owned, what kind of businesses should they be? Do they need to have, a certain number of workers? Do they need to bring in a certain number of income? What are the qualifications?
Absolutely. And happy to share that. I do want to add that we're at 272 now. I do have some checks coming in, but don't know the amounts of them. So I can't come out and say it'll be 305 or whatever, but I do anticipate to have more than 272. That said, there are 125,000 Black-owned employers in the U.S. and close to 3 million incorporated businesses, folks that are solo entrepreneurs. That said, for our program, the requirements are, obviously be a Black-owned business. We don't require certification. You just have to attest to the fact that you are Black-owned. And then in addition, we do want to focus, because we are a charitable organization, the foundation. We want to ensure that these businesses are in the communities most heavily hit. by COVID and the economy over the past 5 years, and so we do disqualify folks that are in the most prosperous 20% of zip codes. So we have a checker on the website if you're sort of curious about that. We use a different measure. We didn't come up with it to determine the prosperity index for that, to make sure that it does go to folks that are in the middle of Atlanta, the middle of Detroit and Memphis, these places that are hotbeds of Black entrepreneurism. And then there is a worker requirement. We do want you to be paying 2 other people to help you run your business. Now, it doesn't matter if I'm not going to ask for W-2 contracts or your 1099s or full-time, part-time, whatever. But we do want the business we do want you to have someone other than yourself in the business, sort of here helping you out to give us because we feel like that's the part where 5,000 of them can really be an accelerator. And then on top of that, the only other restriction for industry is that SBA has some industry restrictions, particularly on places that are like membership clubs, things that are sort of the standard SBA loan disqualifiers. But frankly, that's so few businesses, it's not worth getting into. But we have that list on our website.
So how did the Chamber of Commerce Foundation determine the amount?
So in working with American Express, who was our founding partner back in the summer of 2020, there was a debate over, do we do a lesser amount and give out a lot, or do we give a higher amount and give out fewer? And we believe, where we came down at the time was that $5,000 was an amount that would have kept folks operating until other things could come around. If you look at the data behind Black-owned business starts compared to other racial and ethnic groups, the real big difference in business starts from African Americans and other ethnicities and races is that they tend to start with a lot more of it out of their own pocket. Right now, a lot of that has to do with lack of equitable access to credit, but that amount they start with out of their pocket, based on the industry, there's some differences there, but is about $3,000 to $7,000. Right. And so if we thought if we can sort of get in the middle of that difference, right, and if we sort of think that generally that's sort of the step behind that Black-owned businesses are in their external, credit system or credit status when they start a business, for us, that made sense. Instead of giving out $50,000 grants, which are great, but instead of giving out 270, we'd be giving out 25. Right. And so figured let's let more flowers bloom. Let's get it spread out a little more. So that was how we ended up with $5,000.
All right. Well, I want to take some questions from our watchers, Lawrence, because so many of our watchers are business owners themselves, and they I know they're interested in taking advantage of this opportunity. So I want to share first and foremost, Lana, one of our loyal watchers and supporters. Lana, good to hear from you, ma'am. You said, y'all remember when there were Black Chamber of Commerce in each cities? Where are they now? Can you speak to that, Lawrence?
I'll speak to it anecdotally. I don't want to speak for my partners at the other 4 chambers, but a lot of and this happened for a lot of local chambers. There's been some combination, right? And so instead of having a Black chamber in 3 cities that are 50 miles apart, there's now a regional Black chamber. And that was true across a lot of the non trying to think the right way, a lot of the specialized group chambers that happened to. But a lot of local Black chambers do roll up to USBC, NBCC, NBL, and Walker's Legacy. And if you go to their sites, they have lists of those chambers, and they're changing. There are new ones starting up. There are ones that are forming. That's particularly true in the Midwest. It's a pretty hot spot for it right now. So it is. I mean, I think it ebbs and flows. But to your question earlier, I do think we're going to see a flow in the increase of them.
Absolutely. All right, let's go back to the chat. Mike, my guy, you said Farajii, out of the $700 billion venture capital that is funding, African Americans receive only 1% of that. Whites receive 50%. How does the chamber respond to disparity gaps for startup growth? Thank you, Mike. Good to hear from you, sir. That's a big gap to overcome there, Lawrence.
Yeah, it absolutely is. I mean, if you do look at, you want to make sure that you get that venture capital out equitably. And to my point, that's one of the reasons why so many more Black-owned businesses start with more cash out of their own pocket. And like I said, I'm with the C3, so I do charitable stuff. Don't do a lot in that. However, our C6 side does have a program called the Equality of Opportunity Initiative. Mm-hmm. And one of their 6 pillars is access to this type of capital growth. And so, they are working with not only, specific, venture funds that will only fund Black-owned businesses and getting them, funding from, different series groups, but making sure that African American and other groups get an equal access to the venture firms that are not focused solely on African Americans. So our C6 folks do some work on that.
So here's the thing, and help me understand this a little bit, Lawrence, that if Black folks are spending, Black business owners are spending more out of pocket than any other group of business owners, right? Mm-hmm. How come there isn't an alarm that's sounding within either like the nonprofit space or the government space to support Black businesses, when we know that Black and small businesses, well, particularly small businesses, serve as the backbone of the economy, right? Yeah. But there just doesn't seem to be any real investment coming from the foundation nonprofit, because I worked in the nonprofit sector for years. Yeah. It seems like there's still a culture of competitiveness versus a culture of investment and cooperation. Why is that?
So that's a great question. I think that I'll clarify real quick that difference in spending is to start that business. So that stat comes from something called the Survey of Consumer Finances. And one of the things they do is they look at, if you're a business owner, how did you start your business? And, and African Americans are much more likely to say cash out of my own pocket to the amounts that I stated before. I think there's a couple of challenges there. One, with the nonprofits and foundations, working with businesses and small businesses is a tough nut to crack. And as a foundation and nonprofit that works to, get money and funding to small businesses, it ain't easy. Right. I mean, the amount of things we have to do to make sure everything's above board and the grants are appropriate and their charitable nature. It's difficult for it would be almost impossible for any nonprofit or foundation smaller than ours really to have the backbone support to do it. So It does happen. And you do see folks at, the larger foundations like Knight and Gates. They are trying to crack this nut and make sure that small businesses do develop this. I think on the other side of it, the government only looks at what are called non-employers closely every 5 years. And so they really only know about the employer firms. I'd mentioned the 125,000 Black-owned businesses that have an employee and the 3 million that are working on their own or don't have a formal employee in place. They only know about this. They only know very little about this 3 million group. They know a fair amount about the 125K group.
Right.
But that 2.875 million gap in between them, it's difficult for the government to serve them because they know very little about them. And I'm not trying to give them an out, right? But it's difficult to sort of frame actions and policy on a group that's difficult to put your finger on. And then, when you look at, those small businesses are so volatile, when COVID hit and 41% of them closed, if they'd all been in government programs, they may have been helped, but it's hard to say, if the government could have kept up with that. And foundations, they are trying, but it is just a tough road to hoe.
Well, I think that speaks to my next question coming from another watcher of ours, Beach Lover. You asked the question, why we turn down for business loans when we need them the most? Ask that question. And to your point, we're seeing that more and more, especially on the banking side. And I've worked with an organization in Baltimore where we're taking the banks to task, right? To say you set up banks in our neighborhoods and our communities, but at the end of the day, the loan rate for Black individuals, Black people, for Black businesses is very low. compared to your banks, your banking locations and other places and other communities. And so it's like we see the disparities. You're seeing the numbers, you see the disparities, but yet the loan rate is still low. Is there a way that the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation can start to address that inequity?
So one of the things we're trying to, and I'm speaking as the foundation, not as the
right as the foundation,
so,
right?
Yeah, that's fine. So we are particularly with the coalition and all the work we're doing. We're trying to, answer the question of why they don't have the access. It's I don't work for a bank. I'm not a banker. There is certainly a problem on Black-owned businesses don't get loans. Period. But until we can determine, do they not have them because they apply with the same credentials and get rejected at higher rates? Are they not applying? Are their credentials not the same? And so we're trying to make sure that the playing field is level, to make sure that regardless of a Black owner, white owner, Asian owner, whoever comes in with the same portfolio, that they'll get the same answer.
Yeah,
and part of that comes through a lot of the coaching that we have through our program, through a program called Eureka. It helps ensure that for these businesses, particularly the ones that are new, we have older businesses that frankly don't need help in getting their accounting right. But if we have new businesses that we might be the first step to go show a bank, hey, we got this $5,000 grant, we're a real thing, we're up and running. It can help them sort of put together, stronger packets and help improve that. And so it's something that, we're trying to do from the foundation to, I don't think general awareness is the problem. I think anyone in this space kind of knows that happens.
Yeah.
It's making sure that, we want to make sure that it's not happening before they even, walk into the loan office, and anyone goes to a loan office physically anymore, that it sort of happens that everything getting into the loan office is exactly the same. So
absolutely. Yeah. So talk to us a little bit, Lawrence, about accountability. How, you talked about COVID-19. We have been covering a number of stories and had these discussions here on this show and on Roland Martin Unfiltered about, any type of money that has come in for COVID relief for businesses in general. Yeah. That now we're starting to see these stories about fraud, various businesses taking the money that should have been in the hands of Black businesses. So talk to us, what kind of accountability measures is the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation planning to put in place to ensure that this money, this $5,000 for Black businesses, small Black businesses and Black-owned businesses, go to those places and not to someone else?
I appreciate that question. And to be honest, when we started this in 2020, that's what kept me up at night. Right. What kept me up is that, me and my team needed to make sure that we stewarded the money that we got from our funders and that it went exactly where it needed to go, that it went to these small Black-owned businesses. There is one industry rule that I didn't bring up, but we don't do franchisees, for instance. So we'll do small franchisees if you have less than a handful of stores, but we're not going to give a loan, a $5,000 grant to someone who owns a major food chain franchise, right? That's not because they have access to other capital help if they need it, frankly.
Right.
And so what we do is we do a close review of every single application that we potentially fund. Right. And so, we've done 1,100 here to date, and we have zero evidence of fraud. It's because we are a charitable org. The grant that the recipient would get only has one restriction on it, and that's you can't use it for political purposes. Right. Because you can't use money from a charitable thing to apply to a political. But if you want to use it to bring on a staff member, buy a piece of capital equipment, move to physical space, expand your inventory, and I don't care. Like I trust them to do what they want to do. That's going to help their business out the most. And so we do track it, and most people use it to expand staff hours. But we have a team that goes through and closely reviews every one. Some are harder than others, right? And if there's a question about, hey, this application doesn't add up, there's discrepancy in the W-9, those folks don't get the grant. All right. I mean, so we do exercise a little bit of our own prerogative to make sure that it goes to the folks who it's supposed to go to.
That sounds good. I mean, I think, Lawrence, that this is certainly needed for a lot of small and middle-sized Black-owned businesses. But more importantly, my hope is that this sheds a light on the great disparity of support that is needed to take Black businesses to the next level. I know for me, and wife is a Black business owner. I've been working worked in a nonprofit space as a business owner. So it's an ongoing struggle. It's an uphill battle. And, I would like to see foundations and government agencies and just the for-profit sector to take this thing seriously. Like, we can't have a discussion about, moving America forward if we're not moving the Black business owners forward in the process. And I'm seeing that. And my hope is that as we have this conversation and these opportunities, that it will start to turn the tide to show that, Black businesses, Black-owned businesses are worthy of investment. They're worthy of the attention that they need to move forward. Lawrence, talk to us. How can people get more information about the grant program? I know it kicks off on Monday. How long will the program last? But with these, with the publicity and the fact that you have limited resources, I wanted to make sure that people heard about this sooner rather than later.
Yep. Happy to give those details. So if you go right now to our site, webackblackbusinesses.com, everything I've talked about is there, black and white, ready to be reviewed. We do open the application period on Monday. Right now, you'll see an email collector. Type in your email. The only thing I'll ever use it for is to tell you when the application period is open. It'll be open from Monday to Tuesday the 6th. That's the day after Labor Day, so just over 2 weeks. We ask about 20 just demographic questions. So these are things that you're registering to us that, hey, I'm eligible, want to be considered. So we collect that. It only takes 3 to 4 minutes to fill out. We collect those for 2 weeks. And then at that point, we go through, we have some funders who have geographic focuses in certain areas. So we make sure we hit those. We want to make sure that a certain number of ours go to women-owned, Black-owned businesses. And we've been very fortunate that without having to do anything, we're sitting at close to 2/3, 70% of our grantees are women. So, happy to have that come through. Once that occurs in late September, we'll reach out to whoever we can give grants to, ask them for a few more specific details, the W-9 document we need to do some checking and things like that. So we get that taken care of. Oh, thank you. It's on the site right now.
Yeah.
So we get that up, and then we'll make the decisions in October. Those folks will go through a coaching platform for 6 months. And then we have a separate $25,000 for folks in that group that will be a more qualitative, hey, you spend that $5,000, really great. Your business future is really bright. So the $25,000 grants to about 15 of them will be more of the judging, as opposed to this, which is more, tell me you're registered. We're going to pick some cities we need to go to and to start pulling names.
That's awesome. Kenan, I want to just throw that back on there. webackblackbusinesses.com. Take a look at the site, folks. A grant-making initiative providing immediate financial assistance and long-term support for America's Black-owned small businesses. Folks, you definitely want to take advantage of this opportunity. They have limited funds, $5,000 grants available for a little bit over 300 businesses. And so this is a fantastic opportunity. If you're a Black-owned business, if you're a Black business owner, you want to definitely take a look at this. And I know, Lawrence, that you have this grant making. You talked about the $25,000, but it sounds like you got some other things coming down the pike for the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation. Can people sign up for to be on an email list so they can stay up to date on some of the big initiatives?
Absolutely. So what I recommend doing is apply. apply for the grant. Everyone who doesn't get it, there's a question that says, hey, do you want us to keep you in our list for future Black-owned business focused resources? And as long as you say yes to that, then what we do is about every 2 months, there's other programs that have grants for, Black-owned businesses, sometimes specific industries or locations. We kind of collect those, and keep those both on our website and send those out via email. There are times when, news about something like the MBDA occurs, particularly during COVID when they redid PPP. We made sure that everything that we collected that was useful to our grantees, these folks, last year we had better part of 20,000 applicants, right? And we made sure that for the 19,500 that opted to stay in our email system, that they, every 6 to 8 weeks got more things that they could, launch off and learn more and apply for different grant programs or in ours. Because frankly, I'm not going to, 20,000 times 5,000, right? I don't get 100 million to pass out. But there's other folks that do, and more than happy to point them their way.
Awesome. Lawrence Bowdish, who serves as the executive director of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce Foundation. Lawrence, thank you so much for your time and sharing this opportunity with us today. We truly appreciate it.
It's my pleasure. Thank you.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All right, folks, that's going to do it for us this afternoon. I appreciate each and every one of you for tuning in. Oh, my gosh. Big shout out to my online culture crew. Let's give a shout out to our national correspondent, Ashley Banks. And I thank you so much for all of you continuing in the conversation. So many great questions and so many great, perspectives on all of these discussions, which is why I truly, truly appreciate each and every one of you for joining in and for tuning into the culture every single day. For all of our new watchers, again, thank you for tuning in. I hope that you found this experience of being interactive and engaging to be one that fulfills your need to say something, to be seen, to be heard, because that's what we're working on here on this show and for this platform called Black Star Network. Make sure y'all follow me personally. I can be found on Instagram at TheRealFarajii, REAL, The Real Farajii, FARAJII. You can also hit me up on my Twitter page at Farajii, and I'm on Facebook as well as Farajii Muhammad. I would love to connect with you, build with you, and just continue the conversation about the culture with you. So The Real Farajii on Instagram, Farajii on Twitter, and Farajii Muhammad on Facebook. And of course, we want your support. We want you to continue to show your support for us, Black Star Network. A lot of things coming down the pipe. You've seen the new commercials that we got out right now. Make sure y'all show y'all support for Black Star Network right now. Support us. We can take your support through Cash App, PayPal, Venmo, and Zelle. And we want you to share the content. This is not just about a financial donation. That's important. But it's also about letting people know, seeing the quality of the shows, seeing and hearing the quality of the conversations. That's just as important, because it's one thing to be Black-owned media, but it's another thing to have Black media talking about the conversations that you have at home, in the beauty salon, at the head barbershop, at school, at the workplace. We want to connect with you. We want to be there, right there with you for those discussions. And of course, to highlight some of our very special guest voices. So I appreciate each and every one of you for sharing the content and letting people know the culture is here on every day, Monday through Fridays, 3 to 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, because we truly, truly are trying to work and put together a strong show for your viewing pleasure. Big shout out to my dynamic team, Joel, Shan, King Keenan, Ariel. Thank you for making the show what it is each and every day. Stay tuned, folks. Roland Martin Unfiltered, Eastern Standard Time, 6 o'clock p.m. As always, never be afraid to challenge what's wrong. Stand for what's right while being yourself in the process. God willing, we'll talk tomorrow for another exciting edition of The Culture right here on the Black Star Network. Peace.